Hey champions, it's Tuesday. I hope you have a great day. I hope you're excited for tonight because tonight is our Exploring the Library live stream. We're going to be going back into the topic of deck design, deck building. How do you approach that for the first time as a brand new player? Because we're seeing more and more players join our community and it's been awesome. So I know Alex really wanted to focus on that topic because finding that old video is going to be a challenge, and also we've learned a lot since then. That was way before any of the announcements around Jaelara second edition. So coming into that now, we have the opportunity to talk a little bit more about second edition, what to expect, and how the new set can help change things for deck design. So I'm really excited about this topic. It's going to be a great talk. I also want to mention I talked to George from Compete Sport yesterday. I'm not going to go into details about what we talked about. I just want to let you know it was a great talk. I had a lot of fun, and he's just such a great guy. So I look forward to seeing how future conversations with him goes. There were two box openings that happened yesterday. The first one was by Hennings out at Yodasdata in Germany. So if you know German and you want to see a cool box opening, go check that out. It was a lot of fun, even though I don't know German. So I still had a lot of fun watching the packs open, seeing what foil he got, and then also just his reactions to a lot of things. I think even if you don't know the language, you can still appreciate the tone and the gestures and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. And then the other box opening was from Ben Trading Cards. That was hilarious. It was adorable. I love watching his content. He's just such a genuine and sweet guy. So his reactions to things. And then on top of that, he did call us out on a lot of things. And that's very important to us. I think it's good that the community, especially content creators who are so close to us, who talk to us on a very regular basis, are feeling comfortable enough to put out videos critiquing the product, saying where we could have been better, what we could do now for next time and moving forward. That's great, because that means that we have a genuine partnership. It's not just us buying their favor. It's them showing a genuine expression of, we love this game and we want it to get better in time. And that's what we want to see. So thank you so much, Ben, and thank you for all the comments you made, especially at the end of your video. I really appreciate it. In partnership with that, we worked with Flesh and Bones. Actually, it wasn't so much worked with Flesh and Bones. He found all these small little issues with J2 and was messaging me regularly saying, oh, I found this, I found that. And I was like, just make a video. Just put that out there as content. So now I can direct people to his video saying, go watch this, know of all the issues that we're aware of, and that we're hoping to resolve moving forward. So that's a great video. Of course, links to all of these videos will be in the description. Also, if you haven't noticed them, but they were popping up on screen, so you can click on those, the little information icon, and it'll jump you to the videos that we're talking about here. So I hope you enjoy that. Now, I'm going to do something different with today's vlog, and there will be some cuts and edits moving forward from here on out, because I want to react to some stuff that's being talked about from Bronson. So I had the opportunity to sit with Bronson a while ago and do an interview with him. We dropped some spoilers for Origins in that interview. It was really great, and I'll leave a link to that above as well. But he recently released a video about how this industry could be more environmentally conscious and friendly. And I wanted to respond to some of the comments he made there, react to some of the information he's putting out there. So I'm going to do this kind of in that reaction style video type of thing. We'll see how it goes. Again, if there's a lot of cuts, I'm sorry about that. I hate doing cuts on videos because it makes it very choppy, especially when you have background music going or you have these like floating texts kind of going by on the screen. You notice the jumps a lot more. So I hate doing edits, but I think instead of you sitting around as I'm trying to deal with technical issues and other stuff, you can just have a little bit more of a seamless experience. So let's jump into his video here.
I recently had one of my viewers talk about waste in TCGs with booster pack wrappers and everything, and how recycling is important and the planet's nice and we should be nice back. And I wanted to make a video about it, have a little discussion here today about the waste of booster packs and the waste of the products that you get when you buy Flesh and Blood or any other TCG, man. And it's just an open discussion. The main question is, how do we make it better? Because there's X amount of waste.
So first off, I love that people are having this conversation. I think it's really great because I don't know about what the adults were talking about when this industry is new. I know as a kid, this was never something that was on my mind. And the idea of using cardboard paper recreationally, it it didn't seem as intense back in the day as it does now, especially more recently in Canada. We've been experiencing a lot of drought, a lot of forest fires happening out on the west coast in BC. This is causing a lot of issues, and then from this industry side, paper is in short supply. If you're sitting there as a consumer, as a player, and you're thinking to yourself, how come the release dates are being delayed? How come print runs are being much smaller? You should be well aware that paper right now is a very scarce commodity. Being able to import it is a huge challenge because everything is being shipped these days due to COVID, and this is causing a huge backlog in the shipping industry as a whole. Paper, which used to only take 1 to 2 weeks to go from, the facility that makes the paper, the manufacturer there, over to the printing companies that actually print the card, it used to only take 1 to 2 weeks. Now it's taking 4 to 6 months. That's a massive delay. So I'm glad that people are thinking about this and being a little bit more conscious about that.
It's a big pile. It's like X high. How do we reduce the size to make it more manageable with recycling, with upcycling, all these different methods, man? And I'm gonna be straight up honest. When I read this, and the guy, his name is Event Horizon. That's the username, and he said, imagine an
I hope that this is Event Horizon. That's in Midland. If you are, I know you're going to be carrying Genesis soon, and that's really cool. It's an indirect way for us to have this conversation. If not, whoever you are, again, you have my gratitude for just thinking about this topic. The fact that it's on your mind is very, very important.
ocean filled with booster pack wrappers. But on a serious note, man, I just want to talk about this topic. Now, in my mind, when you have the industry as a whole, I think it's really hard to change this because us as consumers are baked into our minds that this is a trading card game. We have a box, we have packs, we open packs, we get cards. Like this whole loop of process is ingrained in our being. So having a distinction where we don't use booster pack wrappers altogether, I don't think it's very possible. I don't think it's a very easy sell.
So, right off the bat, I think that's a great point. It is, there's been a status quo that had been established for a very long time, and we're accustomed to that. We expect that in a lot of ways. But I don't think it's fair to give the companies leniency just because our expectations as consumers is that the product needs to be this way. This is one of the things that makes Apple as a company very interesting to me. I'm not a big Apple user. I don't support their tech very often. I had a MacBook Pro for a little while, but that's purely because the company I was working for at the time forced us to all have MacBook Pros. But I use Lenovo, Windows, Android, all that kind of stuff. However, my point being, Apple's one of their business statements, their concepts, their foundation is to challenge the status quo. And that's one of the things that we try our best to do. Now, there's a cost to challenging the status quo, and we'll get into that more as we go into this video, but nothing's free. And if things are a particular way, seeing how we can make those pivots, how we can make those change, I think is something as a company we should be exploring on a regular basis. So let's get back into this video.
Quite frankly. But let's go to the topic of recycling the packs. Now, I'm no chemist, I'm no scientist. I don't know the composition of a wrapper. You know, it looks like a silvery wrapper. I don't know how easy it is to recycle those things. So, I think at the end of the day, figuring out different products that have less wrappers in them is the key. So, when they have the
in regards to the topic of wrappers, most recycling facilities should have the capacity to recycle wrappers. Now, the issues coming down, I know in some areas, especially like the KW area, they don't find profitability in recycling small pieces of plastic. That's why they don't ask you to put in your plastic bags that you get from the grocery stores, or Zaire's if you... I don't know if anyone else is from KW area, but we used to call them Zaire's bags. But they ask that you don't put those in because there's no profitability. And that's the other thing to think about the recycling process. It is a business at the end of the day, and there is a question about profitability. The reason why a lot of recycling projects end up failing is because once the plant gets the plastic, they recycle it, they turn it into some sort of, not raw material, but like some sort of other material that's usable for future projects. But then there's no buyer on the other end. There's no one there to say, all right, I'll take that plastic on, I'll buy that off of you and use it for something else. And if there's no money that's being put into the process, then why is the recycling plant going to do this? Because they still have to pay their employees. So if you're wondering why some recycling plants do things differently than others, or why some areas take materials that other areas don't, a lot of it does come down to money, unfortunately. Even if these are subsidized somewhat by the government, it's not fully. And that's the other side that we need to think about when it comes to this, and the challenges that comes up from doing all of this.
These draft events and sealed events, you usually have for, sealed, right? You have 6 booster packs that you get from the box, and you do. I could definitely see a product in the future that just combines like 6 packs into like one big pack. That's a thing. You could do many different things around that, where you use less packs and you just consolidate it into one big brick.
That is a great idea, and I think it's very smart, very smart, very good. There's challenges to that though. Now, this is gonna be a bit. I'm gonna do my best to explain this. So you have all of your cards printed on different forms. So when we talk about forms, let's say press forms, the uncut sheets that you've seen in like Ben Trading Card videos, you've seen them other places in your LGS, hopefully. If your LGS doesn't have an uncut sheet, tell them to reach out to me. I'll send them one, because they should have, every LGS should have at least one uncut sheet. And for, so you get an uncut sheet, and it's gonna have different rarities on them. So we have one sheet that is commons, one sheet for uncommons, one sheet that has both rares and epics on it, and then for J2 we had 2 sheets that were foils. Those all get cut, and then the cards get stored into boxes, right? And then what happens is it gets put into another machine called long form or long forward. I can't quite tell all the time because our manufacturer's in Quebec, so they have a French accent, so I don't always catch the consonants. But they get put into these machines, which you can imagine just like giant arms with not human arms, but mechanical. So you got these long tubes basically, and they have all the cards sitting in them. And the machine says, okay, drop for J2 packs, drop 4 commons, then move the pack over a little bit, or move the machine over a little bit, drop 4 uncommons, move it over a little bit, drop 1 starter, move it over a little bit, drop 2 rares, move it over a little bit, drop 4 commons. And then you have programmed into it exceptions. So 1 in every 7 packs. Instead of dropping in 4 uncommons, it drops in 3, moves over, drops in an epic, drops in the starter, drops into 2 rares, and then all those cards are now, you got the 15 cards right beside each other. Now those get put into a overwrap of the booster pack covering. Now to take that same idea and put it into a different product line, this is again an issue with things aren't free. You now have to reprogram that machine to do something different. You have a lot more room for error because now you're doing 2 different tasks, and if the coding for one task isn't done properly, you can have things kind of mess up. You might not get the same amount of commons. And then if everything's done right, then for the sealed event, you're going to have the stack of cards, which will be sorted as commons, uncommons, rares. Now you could have it that it just like drops 6 packs worth of commons right away, then 6 packs worth of uncommons, and then like certain amount of epics, starters, rares, and then turns that into a brick, and then it's kind of pre-sorted. That's probably doable. But now we have the fact that since we're creating 2 different product suites, the cost is now separated. So you know the concept that like product by cost, the more you order, the cheaper it gets per unit. So for us, we pay by booster box or by booster packs created. So if we were to do a release product, and we just say we ordered 240,000 booster packs, and then 300,000 booster packs, and 240 are set aside for booster boxes, and 60 is set aside for the sealed events. Now all those 300 booster packs gets combined as one cost, and that now drops the cost of each unit lower, which means that now, I know it seems greedy to talk about profit margins as a company. A lot of people don't like that, but we do need to think about profit margins because everyone who works on this product needs to get paid. I need to pay the artists. I need to pay my team. I don't take a salary yet out of Haunted Castle Game. I've been working on this project for 5 years. I haven't taken a salary yet. So I take all the revenue from the company and have been using it to keep the team on. So I don't think it's important to think about this profit margin because it helps support the team a lot more. So these are all the micro decisions that go into that. Is it possible that on a large enough scale we can shift to this other model? Of course it is, and that would be wonderful. And that's why I like the idea. I like it. I think it's a great idea. When can we shift to that model, and when will we even have sealed events? I mean, all that comes down to as the company grows, having the revenue to experiment and try things different. Because again, nothing's free. So I would have to investigate into looking into that. But it's a great idea, and I love it, Bronson. And I hope that it's something that in the future we can leverage that concept for if and when we do seals.
I think that there's a lot of opportunities to reduce production costs, and that's the main thing that I think that companies can do overall. Not Legend Story Studios specifically, but just all of them, right? Because when you think of the major 2 things that they could do as a company, there's 2 methods. One is reduce production costs, and I think that's the best method because you know what? If you talk to a company and you say, "Hey, you're spending too much on your production costs," you gotta lower them. You know what they're gonna say? They're gonna say, "Great, we'll do it. Let's put less production into our product and have less cost of goods sold into the product, so they're getting more profitability, and they can keep the price at the same price point, but just lower the amount of materials that they have in their end product." I think that that's the perfect way of doing this. The not perfect way, I think, is going about it to where saying, "Hey, you're a company, you have so much money, you need to donate money to these initiatives and you need to have all these things." I think when you see that as a consumer, it might have all those feel-good moments in your chest, but it really doesn't do anything, man. I personally don't see it doing anything at the end of the day, because all companies are looking at is the tax kickback for, donations. They're trying to write it off their tax and do some shady method. They'll increase the price of the products that they're selling, saying, "Hey, we're going to donate X amount to planting trees," and then the amount that they donate, they're just going to write it off on their tax. I'm not some tax advisor or anything. I'm just a normal guy in a normal room, but I know BS when I see it. And side note, man, I never understood planting trees. Like, the trees existed before you planted them. If someone says, "Hey, I'm planting 1,000,000 trees," well, didn't the trees exist before you planted them? Weren't they just somewhere else? It's not like there's a dimensional gateway where you put your hand in, you grab the tree, and then now there's one more tree in the world. It already existed. I mean,
So I'm probably going to skip over quite a bit of this so that you go watch the full video to understand his perspective. I don't know how the donation process works, how the planting trees charities work, but my understanding from my experience in the gardening world is that if the soil is not fertile enough, or the what you want to do is start the trees somewhere else where the incubation process and the growth process, especially when they're young saplings, that is very stable and your chances of success are a lot higher. And then when it becomes a little bit more of a mature tree, then you want to transfer it over to an area where it might be more challenging. So a lot of these areas that are having forest fires, that's what they'll do. They'll start it somewhere else and then move it over. And then also, if no one's doing that, a lot of these trees that are pulled out for the for harvesting, for turning into material goods, if no one's doing that, the trees aren't just going to start sprouting out in that area very easily, because they're being ripped off from the roots. And that's, I believe that's some of the process. Anyways, just like how Bronson's not an expert in this, I'm not an expert either. And do your own research. See if those charities are gimmicks or not, or if they're legit foundations. That's all I have to say.
I'm a little too skeptical in life. Let's go back onto the main topic of just how you make it better. So you have X amount of waste, and how do you reduce it? And I think the biggest way for a trading card game company is to lower the production costs. So if that's booster pack wrappers, put maybe less booster packs in your product. If it's just the size of it, maybe reduce the size. And I want to tell you.
So when it comes to booster pack wrappers and reducing the amount of booster packs put in, the challenge here is that it's not going to equate to the same amount. So just say you change your booster pack wrappers from having... So we have 24 packs in a box, and we go from 24 to just say 12. And for every pack, you get 2 times the amount of cards. The biggest consumption here is really the amount of cards that are put in. That part still doesn't change. You're still producing the same amount of cards. And then, yes, you're having less wrappers, but now the cost of each pack will go up, because you wouldn't be charging the same amount for... so if I have 2 packs of Race here, it's just say each one is worth $4. Then if I were to take these 2 packs and combine the cards, you're going to pay $8, because the money isn't in the wrapper. It's in the cards inside. So you as a consumer are going to pay $8. And that increases the barrier of entry into the product, especially for people who are casual players and are only buying 1 or 2 packs a week. If your casual hobby thing is now becoming $10 a week or $15 a week, it becomes challenging, because then you start comparing it to other things. $10 a week, that's a meal, right? Or depending where you're at. It could also be going to see a movie with your friends. Would you go buy 1 booster pack or go watch a movie? How much entertainment value are you getting out of that? Because if that 1 pack doesn't give you enough entertainment value compared to a movie, which you could spend 2 hours watching it and have the full theater experience, it's a very different conversation you're having at that point, right? So you can't put more cards into a single pack. That offsets the value of what should be a relatively cheap hobby. That's the one thing we always compare when we talk about TCGs versus miniatures. Miniatures, if you want to buy just one model, you got to pay quite a bit. But if you want to buy just one pack of cards, that's relatively cheap. And that's that's my perspective. I'm not expecting people to buy booster boxes of Genesis. People do, that's cool, have fun. But I am also looking at the players who are buying 1 pack a week, 2 packs a week. What is their entertainment value that they're getting out of it? Now, the other approach is, why don't we just have booster boxes that have 12 packs instead of 24? Well, now you're not actually reducing waste, you're creating waste, because you're taking the amount of cardboard that would go into one booster box and splitting it into, you're now doubling it, because now you have to create 2 different booster boxes. So the smaller the booster box, the more cardboard there is. Yes, it will sell easier, because now a player can go and just say a booster box costs $100. Now they could just buy half a booster box for $50, and there'll be a lot more players who that's financially accessible than players who you have to stretch to find that $100. So there is, every option comes with its own pros and cons, and I don't think there's a direct solution that will be purely upside even when you're talking on the environmental factors. And then the other side to it is also just the amount of bulk that's being bought. I think it's amazing that this industry has seen such a boom. That's great. I think that it's been a long time coming since we've seen this many people who are this interested in collectible card games. It's awesome. But the downside to that is, with that many people in an industry that is physical, that has actual waste that's created as a byproduct, that's going to scale with it. And we haven't seen a linear scale in growth. We've seen an exponential scale on growth when it comes to the player base. And it's just an inherent issue. Everything we're making about this industry is essentially, one way or another, looked at as waste. It's not an essential industry. It's a completely it's a complete entertainment industry with a lot of byproducts. So I love the sentiment here, and I think in a lot of ways it's really great. I just don't think I don't see reducing the amount of wrappers out there as the solution.
I'll tell you something that's really important too is Crucible War. If you look at the booster box, it's smaller, and you as a consumer might be like, that's kind of weird, I don't know, I like the bigger one. But man, I've talked to a couple store owners, they love the small box. You know why? Because it's easier to ship. And
yes. That's very true. I've gotten a lot of praise about the Genesis boxes being relatively thin, and I love that. And I think if you have the opportunity to reduce the size, because if we're talking about just say a centimeter in height, but you're producing 30,000 boxes, well, that centimeter of cardboard, it counts, right? It's like how every penny counts, every dollar counts. That centimeter of or quarter of an inch or whatever your metric is, that does count over time. So having that, now I know there's a lot of gripe with the chip industry because they put in so much air into their product, but that's actually like a preservative chemical that's put in there to help the chip stay fresh longer. Putting in the air, I don't think, putting in that extra space in the packs or in the booster boxes, I don't think in the long run actually does protect the product like it does with chips. In this case, and I think the smaller boxes is probably a good way to approach. It's, I think, a micro change that could have impact. And now, is it a significant impact? Is it enough to change the way this industry is kind of approached? No, it's not. But it's still something. And one step in the right direction is still one step in the right direction. It's better than taking no steps or taking steps backwards.
Guess what happens when it's easier to ship? That's more money for them. They don't have to spend as much money shipping off their product. And I think
shipping is also really bad for the environment.
I think overall, if you ask me this question, how do you reduce the amount of waste? I would say reduce the amount of product that you have in each product. You know, sell these things for maybe a little less, maybe keep the same price, but just reduce the amount of commons that are in your product. I think for Legend Story Studios specifically too, that we don't really need that much bulk, and that's a hard thing for me to say because I love bulk, but honestly, the cards and the card values of bulk is just pennies. And you end up, if you open a bunch of these boxes, if you open like 1 or 2 cases, you've got so much bulk that you have no idea what to do with. So I think reducing the amount of bulk that you have in your product is probably a smart idea.
So the video goes on. We got about halfway through, and he makes a lot of great points. I want to talk a little bit about shipping. So if you want to make an environmental impact, don't get your product shipped. Go visit your LGS. Now, be safe. We're in COVID right now. We're in a pandemic. Be safe. Be careful. Don't go visit your LGS if you can't. But shipping stuff, that's not great. If you can, public transit over to your LGS, walk over, whatever, that's always just, that helps. That makes a difference. Again, it's not one step, but it's the one steps that we gotta count. So, and also, like, getting it, if you are living, just say, in Texas, but the only store in your area, there's no store in your area that's carrying the product you want, and you got to get it shipped from, Seattle, then that is a lot of travel for, a relatively small package. So be careful on how much you're shipping, and if you're shipping stuff, just be conscientious that this is happening. I saw a great tech video. I'm actually going to leave that as a link about the whole idea of, like, this is an issue that is also hammering the cell phone industry, and we should be talking about it a little bit more. We should be thinking about it. Now, the idea of reducing commons. This is the last thing I'm going to touch on when it comes to this video. I'm going to leave a link. Go watch the rest of his video. Leave comment. Join that conversation. Be part of that conversation. And come back to me and tell me how we could be doing more for the industry, because this is stuff that I think about all the time. Now, there's this whole thing. I used to write scripts as a kid when I was in high school, and I've done a lot of story writing, and you hear this a lot when you're on that side of it, which is like every sentence matters. Every word you put in has to grab your audience's attention. I tried my best to carry that philosophy into design, into card design. So if we're going to put a card into a set, we have to have a purpose for it. Is this card designed for draft? Is this card designed for sealed? Is this card designed for standard? Is this card designed for this format, that format, so on and so forth, for these players, those players? Don't create a card that's just in there for the sake of being in there, right? Everything should have a reason, have a design purpose. Now, as players, since we have expanded our ways we interact with the games, that has a downstream impact. Let's take a second look at. I don't want to bring up other games, so we'll bring this back to Genesis. Genesis currently, it's the most promoted format is just standard construction, but the game does get played in draft, and it does get played in sealed. So we do consider those formats when we design sets. Now, as we're designing sets, we were like, no, we should put in a card that's good for drafting purposes. Well, now we're putting in a card that's good for one format, but not good for another. So for some players, this card's complete waste. For other players, this card's highly valuable. And then we create a card that is for sealed. Well, now, this card's good for only 33% of use cases, or less, 25% of use cases, and the other 75% of the times it's useless. Well, that's really weird. And then creating cards that are edge cases for particular decks. So like the Long Holy deck isn't a deck that gets played a whole lot. I play it a lot, so when we made J2, I advocated for certain elements of that deck to be put into J2 so that other people can have access to it. I think it's a great deck. I think more people should be playing with it. But just say only 1% of the people are playing it, and there's a card, Holy Imbue, which I think is good 50% of the time or 25% of the time for that holy deck. It was so now this one card is good 25% of the time for the 1% of the players. That's now creating bulk that we don't need, but it does have a use case. So the more the game gets fractured, the more complexity we want to add into the game, the more we have to create cards that don't have just overall generic uses. If the game was only played for 2 players and there's only one format that the game was played in, and that way every piece gets used, that's great. Then there's no waste when it comes to the product. And what I'm talking about here is chess. Look at chess. If there's one way, there are other formats, but like there's one standard format, and even those other formats, so like speed chess or competitive chess and all those kind of things, it still uses the same pieces, which is great. It actually adds a few pieces, which only some people need, so the manufacturing on that doesn't need to be as high as just a standard chessboard. And then when you buy the chessboard and you need to pack that thing away, well, you put it back into the box you bought it with. That's why something like chess is so beautiful and so elegant, because and it has a lot of replayability. So it's a very awesome game in that regards. But for a TCG, we have so many different players. You have investors. So now we have to add in so investors. We have to add in things that could over time gain value. Now we're creating a whole set of cards whose purpose is to gain value in the future. That's kind of a weird thing to do. We have collectors. Now we have to put in something into the game that gives collectors a chase factor and something to be proud of when they accomplish it. That's a whole other set of cards that we're putting into the game. Then we have competitive players. So we have to create cards that are functionally good in a competitive scene. Then casual players. Then drafters, then standard, and now we're going to make, there's 2v2 or multiplayer, and those have completely different deck formats. And if you don't cater to all these things, well, your product's also not going to take off the shelf. Other players aren't going to be, you're going to alienate a whole group of players that causes challenges. Like when we started Genesis and we had Alpha out there, it wasn't for investors. It wasn't for collectors. It was for just the people who played the game and who only played it in standard because the game didn't do so well in draft or in multiplayer. Then we went to beta, and that was a little bit more of a draftable set because the cost of product was a lot lower, and all these type of things. There's an inherent flaw in this industry that's causing the waste, and that's the big challenge. How to resolve that? I think there is a resolution. And Bronson, again, thank you so much for creating this video and having this conversation. Because if we're not having the conversation, I wouldn't be making this video right now. But what the solution is, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be. And I hope that we can find it over time. And I think that there are other things we should be looking at. Like, how do we make the manufacturing process carbon neutral? How do we encourage players to recycle their booster boxes and the booster packs? How do we encourage players to recycle their cards that they don't use? Or is there a way to upcycle? And you mentioned this later in your video, and you have some great ideas there. I don't know how much of those are that can be executed on, but I'll explore. And maybe when I figure it out, I'll let you know. But there's so much more that happens behind the scene when it tries to make a product that's taking off and selling. Because when we were small and we didn't cater to all these different segments of the industry, we got laughed at by a lot of stores. And they're like, your product's not going to sell at my store. No one's interested in it. I think you got a long way to go before you can compete in the space. And it's a double-edged sword. Anyways, this video's gone on long enough, and I still have to spend some time editing it. I hope you like this conversation. It's not the ending of this conversation. This is truly, truly just the beginning. But I hope you enjoyed yourself. You had a wonderful time in this video. Go check out the rest of Bronson's video. Go check out the video about how this topic is impacting the mobile industry. And go check out all those box openings. And join us again tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, where we'll be live streaming the conversation of deck building for Genesis. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.